started. Brilliant. And a very, very warm welcome to everyone who is joining us today for our Live Well Live webinar. We're going to be talking all about habits, but we'll start with just a couple of quick introductions and letting you know how the webinar is going to run. So for anyone who has not met me before, I'm Ruth Taylor. I'm the nutritionist with Boots Online Doctor and also a registered nurse and health and wellness coach. And really today is going to be looking all about the importance of habits. Be really good to hear from you. I'm based down in the not so sunny Hampshire. It's a bit of a grey day, bit windy, bit grey, but actually that makes work slightly easier than those hot, steamy days that we had last week, doesn't it, Mandeep?
It does, Ruth.
And I'm joined today by the lovely Mandeep. So, Mandeep, please tell us a little bit about yourself. And
Thanks, Ruth.
yeah, it'd be great to have you here.
Thank you. Yeah, so my name is Mandeep. I'm one of the pharmacist prescribers here at Boots Online Doctor. I'm also a service lead for the weight management service and have not too recently completed my postgraduate diploma in obesity and weight management. So really keen to support as many people as possible on their weight management service.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mandeep. It's great to have you here. And we're joined today by Julia, who is part of the Boots Online Doctor team, and she's here to help us with all of the IT tech problems that we may have and to share any resources that would be helpful for us to share with you. Please do say hello in the chat box. We love to hear from you. Just to let you know how the webinar is going to run, we've got a few slides that we're going to share with you, and then we will come to your questions. For the purposes of making it easier for us to help as many people as possible, we'd really love it if you could find the Q&A box, which you should find at the bottom of your screen. And you should be able to pop your questions straight into the Q&A box. If for any reason you're struggling to find that, please pop them into the chat box and we'll do our best to have a look for those. Hello to Michelle in Glasgow. It's miserable and raining. Yeah, sorry to hear that. It is miserable here too. Sunny here in South London. Who's that? Somebody on their iPad. Thank you. Breezy and grey in Cambridge. Yeah, and it is somebody's here from Tewkesbury, Vincent from London. It's great. We're getting a combination of lots of people, and love to know how many webinars you've been to before. Is it your first one? Is this the first one you've come to? Have you been to any before? We've got Effie in Toronto, Canada. I think that is as far abroad as we're going today. But do say if you're anywhere further. And we've got a rainy Belfast and a windy Cheshire. Right, we better stop talking about the weather. I reckon we could fill up the whole webinar talking about where people are and the webinar. So thank you so much for joining us, whether it's your first or one of many. We're delighted you're here with us. So let's start by checking in with how your week has been over the last few weeks. So let's take a few moments to reflect and think about, okay, were you here with us last week? We were talking all about protein, and why we talk about protein so much is we know it's sort of like a fundamental part of your eating plan, how to eat in terms of supporting your weight loss, your appetite control, and also really importantly, helping to maintain muscle mass in weight loss. So we'd love to know, we'd love to hear from you right now how you've got on this week. We're not really interested in perfection. We don't need perfection. We're just looking for a bit of progress. So we know small steps, simple steps are as steady progress as the thing is going to help us all win the race. Maybe you swapped a snack for a more protein rich option. Maybe you added some protein to your breakfast. Perhaps you became a little bit more aware of whether you're eating enough protein through the week and are making some positive intentions. Whatever positive step you make, it is a progress. So let's be honest about this. It's not easy. We know that it's never straightforward. Weight loss and making changes isn't straightforward. And this is why we're going to be talking all about habits. But we would love to hear from you. Anything happens. So let's have a look. We've also got a poll that we're starting with. Thanks, Julia, for sharing that. Really interested to know what's going on for you, if there are any habits you're aware of that might be tripping you up. And welcome to AT first webinar today. And yeah, prioritize protein. So Don, you've prioritized protein and veg, but worried I'm not hungry enough some days. Okay, let's have a think about that. Or maybe you need to have a think about that. Vincent, you ate out a few times in the last week and was able to keep your portions in control. That is such a win. Well done for that. So good to hear that you're doing well. And it's really helpful when you share with one another because we're all humans here and humans do best when they help other humans, I think. So whatever you're finding helps you can really help others too. So, Mandeep, let's have a look at this poll. So, from the people who are joining us today, I can see we've got a couple of clear habits that are perhaps sticking and getting in people's way from progress. And neither of them come as big surprises, but evening snacking, isn't that interesting? We're going to talk a bit about this, aren't we, Mandeep, and why
Yeah.
maybe that's happening, and also emotional eating. Thank you for taking part in the poll. It's completely anonymous. We don't know who's answering what. We just know what the trend is in the room, and that can really help. And also to help you to know you're not alone. Like 43% of you are saying emotional eating is something that's getting in your way. That's a lot of people. And 33% of you are saying it's evening snacking. Quite a few of you thinking it might be the large portions. So, really interesting, really helpful for you to start thinking about what might be getting in your way and to start thinking about what you might need to be thinking about doing differently, those habits that we've created that we might need to move away from. Mandeep, let's plow in and let's start talking about habits and why they're so important.
Yeah, that brings us in nicely, doesn't it? To start talking about habits, and sort of much of what we do every day, it does happen automatically. And I think some of the answers there shows that because we don't stop and think about every decision we make. We do rely on patterns. We fall quickly into patterns around what we eat, when we're eating, whether or not we're snacking, how much we move, and how we respond to stress and difficult emotions. And then over time, these patterns become habits, and those habits can have a powerful impact on our health and our weight. However, the encouraging news is habits are learned. So if something is learned, it can also be changed, which is reassuring. Our brains are constantly adapting, learning new ways of doing things. So really, no matter where you are in your journey, whether you're at the start, whether you're in your maintenance phase, wherever you are, a positive change is possible. And I think a lot of the time we think that successful weight loss is about having willpower, but we do see it a little bit differently, because actually we know that lasting success often comes from creating habits. So it's the habits that will then support your health goals. So very small, simple habits, but I think the key is the habits that you can repeat consistently. And I think that really is the key message here is about consistency because Ruth, like you mentioned at the start, we're not perfect and we're not aiming for perfection. But what we want to see is these habits to develop good habits which are going to support long-term success, that which we can build up over time. So yeah, so we'd like you to start thinking about this today. So which habits are helping you move towards your health goals? And we know a couple of people have put a few examples in the chat, which is great. And habits which may be quietly holding you back. So I think we may have identified possibly made a bit of a start on that on the poll. So again, not to be judgmental, not with criticism, but just to be curious and to become aware. Because if we can become more aware, then that's where change can begin as well.
Yeah, very much so. I think this is such an important point, isn't it? And actually we don't have to be perfect. We don't have to be good. We can be, just making that first little foray, the first step is sometimes all it needs because I think it's just can feel quite frightening to make change. And also we get very stuck in our comfort zones, don't we? All of us, life we want an easy life. We want life to just be manageable for most of us. So I think actually we need to be honest with ourselves about what we actually can manage because sometimes life's enough. Just getting out of bed in the morning is enough for all of us, isn't it? So let's think about why willpower isn't enough. I think this is really important. And it's exactly what you said, Mandeep, isn't it? That, willpower really isn't the thing that's going to get us through. We know willpower will run out. We know that our motivation can change as well. So this is about showing up for yourself and really working out what is the most important thing for you right now in this whole story. So one of our most common beliefs about weight loss is that success comes down to willpower. I hear this so often. We hear this in the webinars. We hear this when we talk to our patients one to one. We hear this in our own worlds, our own worlds when we're talking to our friends. Everybody thinks willpower is the answer. And people sometimes tell themselves, I just need more self-control or I need to try harder. I bet there's people in the audience who are saying this to themselves even today. But actually, in reality, that's not the problem. Just think about your day. Quite often, by the time, and I know this is true for Mandy, we were talking about this earlier, weren't we? But by the time the evening arrives, you've already made loads and loads of decisions, hundreds of decisions. You've been thinking about work, your family, maybe emails you've had to send, appointments you've had to go to or set up. Just life in general can be quite a lot to manage. And it's no surprise that actually, interesting, the research tells us that making healthy choices gets harder as the day goes on. So we can call this decision fatigue. I like this. It's quite a techie little saying, but I think actually we run out of making decisions. So the more decisions that we have to make throughout the day, the harder it can become to make good choices later on in the day. And that's why maybe some of you were saying you're sitting in the evening and you're snacking when you're watching TV. Maybe it's just like the habit, number one, and actually you've run out of making those healthy choices as well. Number two, it's a combination of factors many times, or maybe we've got the wrong food to snack in. Maybe there's just too much temptation in our way, and actually by then, by the end of the day, you've got no decisions left. It's just easier to do the thing that actually makes you feel better by then. Does that sound familiar? I'd really be interested to know how much harder do you find making healthy choices in the evening compared to in the morning? Put a number in the chat box from 1 to 10. So 1, it is quite hard. 10, it's quite easy. It's easy to make those healthy choices in the evening. I'd be really interested. Mandeep, what's your number? We were saying mine last night was probably around a 4. Here we go.
I said that as well, yeah.
Yeah,
Very
really.
low last night. In the morning, it was much higher.
Yeah. It's really amazingly different. It's been really interesting, guys, to maybe track this and just see what's going on for you. It's so interesting. We've got lots of fives. Somebody's saying food has always been a reward, hardwired in your brain. But actually, we can change that hardwiring, and that's why we're here today. We want to talk about how we change that hardwiring, how we change that belief that this is us, this is how we're going to turn up every day for the rest of our life. Loads of fives, a few sixes. Well done for the sixes. Well done for even admitting that it's maybe the evenings are harder. They're definitely my worst time of day. I need to really change my model. Somebody's got an 8, so well done for your 8. If you've got any top tips to how you got there, I'd love to hear them. And I guess this really explains why relying on our motivation alone can be really difficult, because we know motivation comes and goes. Some days, even into the evening, you're going to get that focus, that energy, and other days you just won't. Life can get in the way, it can trip you up. That's completely normal. The good news is that healthy habits don't just rely on motivation. They actually can help reduce the number of decisions you need to make. And that's why this is so important. They become automatic, just like brushing our teeth, putting on a seatbelt when we get in the car. We need to think about simple systems, simple routines, and they become really powerful. They're the things that can carry us through those evenings when we've got that exhaustion, when we've made all the decisions we're capable of making that day. Because habits are the thing that are going to get us through. They're the things that if we get them right, they will stop us from having to rely on our willpower for the rest of our lives. Because actually, I bet some of the habits you've been doing for years, some of those are going to be great habits, some of them maybe less great. So it's about actually making some choices here and building those habits around healthier choices. And really, this is where lasting change begins. This is what's going to get you through and keep you there. So this is why habits is so important. Mandeep, over to you. I love this webinar.
Yeah, great. No, thank you, Ruth. So, yeah, absolutely. So we've talked about why habits matter. So now let's have a little think about how we can actually change them. So I guess the first step is awareness. So before we can change anything, we need to notice what it is that we're doing. Most of the time, habits follow a really simple pattern. So there's a cue, then there's the behavior, and then there's a reward. And then over time, that loop becomes stronger and stronger. So for example, you've had a stressful day at work. So stress in this case is the cue. We then may reach for biscuits or chocolate, which is the considered the behavior. And then the reward is the temporary comfort that comes from that. Now, if you that then becomes a pattern, and then we keep repeating it, and then the whole before you know it, the whole process is happening automatically. So, we're doing it without even thinking about it. So if you can recognize some of your own habits, then that is really, really helpful, because becoming more aware is where change begins. So we mentioned at the poll, some people have already identified evening snacking, maybe a habit, that's something that they need to work on. So again, that first step you've already taken is by becoming aware. Um, and then the other thing which I find really useful is don't try and stop the habit. So I've heard people say, right, that's it. I'm just not going to eat biscuits anymore. But in reality, that's not practical, and we're not going. So don't set yourself up for failure. Try and replace the habit instead. So, for example, in the example I gave earlier, if you feel stressed, so you have you reach for the packet of biscuits, maybe change that. So maybe you're stressed. Your new habit could become going out for a short walk, grab a cup of tea instead, get some fresh air. So the cue is going to remain the same. Stress is inevitable, but your response to that is now changed. And then you can also kind of like monitor like positive behaviors. So, for example, if you're tracking your steps, you can think, right, if you're now going to start going for a walk, you can look at your number of steps. You can focus on your protein intake, your sleep, rather than getting hung up on, I was feeling stressed. So research has identified that several habits which can lead to weight gain. So, for example, sugary drinks, frequent sweets, mindless snacking, if we're eating too quickly, and large portion sizes. And again, a lot of these behaviors happen automatically because we've practiced them so many times. Um, I think another useful example is, for example, if you open a large pack of crisps, and then you realize suddenly it's empty. We've all been there. And actually, it might be just changing it slightly. So maybe putting a portion into a bowl, that will help to create like a natural stopping point, and also increases your awareness as well. So it's not about banning crisps altogether, but it's just about making slight changes, which overall, when repeated consistently, are going to be a positive step in our weight loss journey. Um, it's also about becoming curious as well about your habits. So, which habits are really helping you at the moment? It's that positive step forward. Which habits may be getting in the way? Again, not with judgment, not with criticism, but just with curiosity, and becoming really aware, because you're more likely to have a lasting change if you become aware.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I was just thinking they're almost like trip hazards, aren't they? They're the thing that trip us up and get in our way. They're sort of quite hazardous, or can be for many of us. So we were talking about this when we were saying making healthy choices appears. I'd be really interested. We'll repeat that sort of number thing in the chat box. So in the morning, how easy do you find it to make healthier choices? Again, 0 being not that easy at all to 10 being amazingly easy. Let's see, is there a difference, or are we still on the 4s, the 5s, the 6s? And by the way, Bridget, thank you for telling us your 8 was actually a 2. That makes sense, but if anybody has got to that 8, I'd love to know. So let's see. Are you finding the morning easier? Let's have a look. Or are you still 10? Gosh, there's a 10 here. That's so cool. 8s, 10s, 6s, maybe. Let's see, where are we at? So I'm less hungry in the morning. So 7, interesting, isn't it? What is hunger? Where is that hunger coming from? Maybe because you're less hungry in the morning, you eat less protein, and then you're hungry in the evening. There's all sorts of patterns, and beginning to recognize those patterns can really help us begin to sort of become a bit curious, exactly what you were saying, Mandeep. And just thinking about, don't worry if you got the numbers around the wrong way, it's fine. There's no drama. Um, so yeah. I think mainly we do find generally that people find it slightly easier to make those healthier choices in the morning than they do in the evening. And we know from talking to everyone here today that you're not alone if that's the case. Lots of people, as we've already said, think it's because they've run out of willpower, but there might be something else going on, and that's that whole decision fatigue. Throughout the day, we're constantly making decisions what to wear, what to eat, decisions for work, family decisions, hundreds of small choices. And imagine starting each day with a pot of decision making energy, and every decision takes a little bit out of that pot. So by the end of the day, your pot might be running quite low, and that's what happens. We need things to become automatic and familiar in a good way. Because if we make healthy choices to become our habits, then they're easier to repeat. It really stands to reason, doesn't it? And we've got a really great webinar coming up in a couple of weeks all about meal preparation, food planning, which can really help in terms of these healthy habits. So really think about that because that is something that can make a big difference. One question we're often asked is how long does it take to build a habit? And the answer is that there is no definitive answer. Some habits can become really quick to establish quite quickly, others can take significantly longer. What isn't important isn't the number of days it takes, it's about repetition. It's about knowing what you're doing, making a decision, and repeating the behavior. So you're strengthening the pathway in your brain that that behavior then becomes more automatic. Again, it's not about perfection, it is 100% about consistency. So we want you to start thinking, okay, what are those things that are tripping up? What are my trip hazards? Consistency is what's going to turn that behavior into a new habit. So we'd really love you to start thinking about one healthy choice that already happens automatically in your life. Maybe it's that you drink water, maybe it's in the morning, or maybe you take a walk at lunchtime. Maybe you prepare tomorrow's lunch before you go to bed, or breakfast even. Maybe or somebody has to take medication at the same time each day. Well, it wasn't something that happened naturally before you started taking that medication. It's something you've had to create a habit around. So have a think about that because these are already successful habits. So if you've got anything you'd like to share, really think about popping that in the chat box because today's all about building on those foundations. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the cycle of creating new habits. Mandeep.
Yeah, thank you, Ruth. Yeah, so we've talked about why habits matter, but let's look at how we can create new habits because as we've mentioned before, people think that they need more motivation. But actually what we really need is a system that's going to make it easier for us. It's going to make the success easier. And the first step is to make the habit obvious because what we see influences what we do. So, for example, if you have got a goal to drink more water, keep a water bottle nearby. If you want to go for a walk, for example, leave your walking shoes where you'll see them. Another one which is kind of was my personal favorite of creating a habit was attending the gym, but putting it in my diary like a meeting. So I knew it was non-negotiable. That was the time. It wasn't going to get cancelled. It wasn't going to be how I felt on the day. It was in the calendar and it was booked in. And then also think about make it attractive also. Think about connecting the habit to your why. So why do you want to change your habit? Why do you want to make new habits? So it could be more energy, better health, more confidence, whatever it is that matters most to you. And then again, make it easy. So don't try and climb a whole mountain in a day. Just very small, simple steps. Again, the keys, as we mentioned earlier, we want consistency, we want steady progress, and also we want to celebrate the small wins. So even if it is that you manage to get out for a walk at lunchtime and you've not done that before, celebrate that success. Healthy meals, celebrate that because, and then habits are built through repetition. And as we've mentioned, and some of you have mentioned this in the chat as well, some days will be easier than others, and some days won't go to plan, and that's okay. That's absolutely fine. You just start again. So again, just remembering your why, building those habits in, and repeating it, and that is what's going to help to strengthen the pathway.
Yeah, very much so. And it sort of creates the celebrating along the way. I think we were talking about this as well, Mandeep, weren't we? That actually we often celebrate when we've achieved that sort of final goal. We're very good at sort of recognizing when something's a big tick in the box and we've got there. But actually, what we're not so good at, maybe this is because this is how we're brought up, is we don't celebrate the successful steps on the way. So one of the things to do is actually to celebrate the small wins because that really helps to reinforce you to feel positive about that little win. And that will help you do that little win time and time again so that it becomes something that you can do more easily. So it creates those pathways, it creates this thing called neuroplasticity. We can rewrite our habits, we can relearn habits. So we are not stuck. We can carry on learning until we're no longer here, really. So it is about just recognizing that even though we feel like we're stuck in that trap of those evening routines and sitting down and watching TV and maybe nibbling on the wrong foods. That's just a habit. Habits can be changed. We can break the habits that aren't really serving us anymore. So one of my favorite habit building techniques comes from the work of, I think it is, gosh, the name was in my head a minute ago and it's gone. James Clear, he's written a book called Habit Stacking or The Power of Habit. I can't remember what his book is. We've got a link to that, Julia, if you don't mind sharing, because it's a great little book, really powerful, helpful behavior change habit, sort of all of the reinforcing lots of what we're talking about today. This is a really simple technique. So instead of trying to remember a completely new behavior, we attach that behavior to something we're already doing every day. The reason we recommend that you try this as well is because actually that first behavior or that first habit is something you're already doing. So it's already existing. There's a cue there already for you. For example, you brush your teeth. Every time you brush your teeth, you'll make a habit to do 5 squats or some press ups against the wall. You will put the kettle on to have a hot drink. So maybe every time you put the kettle on to have a hot drink, you also pour yourself a glass of water and you drink that. Or you maybe load the dishwasher. And maybe every time you turn the dishwasher on, you think, I'm going to do 10 minutes of movement, whether that's a jig in the kitchen or you go for a walk, just something that actually brings some movement into your body and into your life and into your day. We use a habit that already exists as an anchor for a new one. This is a really helpful strategy. It works really well. And I definitely do the sort of squats and the wall press ups. It really is easy. And actually, cumulatively across the day, you end up doing so much more. So it really makes life work in a really simple way. Um, Habit stacking works both ways. We know that we have unhelpful habits. So maybe making a cup of tea automatically leads to reaching for that biscuit, or sitting down to watch TV leads to snacking. The cue is the thing that is going to trigger the behavior. So that's why we want you to get this awareness because you can swap. So if you're somebody who sits down and watches TV and you snack, okay, you're probably not going to find it easy to not snack. So prepare a healthy snack. Get, some chopped carrots, some chopped apple, some, I don't know, some grapes, anything that would be a healthy alternative would be great. And because it's not about, we can't just change overnight, but we can switch things around. If you're somebody who perhaps always has a biscuit at 11 in the morning, maybe you could be somebody who always does some squats, and again, you could have some hummus or you could have some nut butter. Like we talk like health fiends, we're not really, but we just know that it's really important to be thinking about what those habits are. Um, is there a habit that you do every single day that you could use as an anchor for a new healthy habit? Have a think. Really, really useful to just start thinking. So, as we finish today, we're going to think about the habits are built through repetition. Some days are definitely going to be easier than others. Maybe Fridays can be a really difficult day because, especially if we've worked a really long week, and often there are the evenings when we're out socializing, or lots of people I know are. Some days just don't go to plan. That's absolutely okay. We're simply going to start again, one step at a time. It's just a reset. Every time you have something to eat, you get the opportunity of whether this is something healthy you want, or whether it's a habit or something maybe that you really don't want anymore and it's not serving you. It's just a habit. So maybe actually put that pause in and just think, okay, is this what I really, really want? Okay, it's going to give me that short-term fix, but is that going to give me the long-term outcome that I'm looking for? We're creating habits to support health for years to come. So you don't need to change everything in one day. Just choose one thing and make it something that feels really achievable for you right in this moment, this week, today, for the rest of the week, and repeat it. Repeat it as often as you can so that really it just becomes something that you start doing a little bit more automatically. And every positive choice you make, you will be building your future health. So it really is important. Small choices repeated consistently over time. So really start thinking about those healthy habits and how you could start making a difference for you. And we're going to share our last poll. I think, Julia, if that's okay, brilliant. You must have been on cue there. So let's have a look. We're just asking you, which new habit are you going to focus on over the next week? This is about you. This isn't a competition with anyone else. This is completely anonymous. Um, for me, I think it's the movement, maybe after lunch.
Mine needs to be movement as well. I completely agree. The one thing I have started, haven't quite embedded it, so it's not a fully built habit, is doing squats on the hour when
Oh,
I'm working from home.
that with you?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I can't do it while I'm brushing my teeth, Ruth. I can't coordinate two things at once, but
I can't do it while I no, I can't do it while I do it after. No, I just couldn't. And actually had to start by leaning because I'm not very strong. So I was sort of like leaning with my back against the wall and sliding up and down, but actually it worked. My strength is much better. So you don't have it's not perfection, is it?
no.
No, don't try and do it while you're brushing your teeth. Well, that would be good. Let's have a look, Mandeep, and see what people are thinking they're going to be doing. A few of you, only a few of you are actually commenting on this. Maybe you are still in that sort of thinking phase. That's absolutely fine. Oh, actually, no, about 70% of you have contributed. Thank you. Lots of you are going to move more every day. We're going to hold you for this. Come back next week. Let us know how you get on. So around 36% of you are going to move. What does that mean to you? You're going to do some squats. You're going to get out for a walk. Love to hear a little bit more about that in the chat box. What does that moving every day mean to you? Lots of people are going to be drinking more water. Okay, what does that mean? Are you drinking no water? Are you going to be drinking 3 glasses of water? Are you going to be drinking couple of litres of water? Reducing snacking is up there as a popular. So what does that mean? Are you going to stop the snacks? Or are you going to swap them for something different? And you're going to plan your meals ahead and eat more mindfully. So well done. It sounds like I would really love you to write those down as what you were going to take away from this webinar. And I'd love for you to come back next week and tell us how you get on. We are back next week looking at controlling cravings and how we prevent that self-sabotage. It ties in really nicely with today's webinar. Again, we've got that meal planning mastery webinar again on the 15th of June. And then on the 22nd, it will be myself and Sam with your questions. So we're just going to do a whole webinar about questions because we know that sometimes when there's lots and lots of you here, it can be frustrating that not all of your questions are answered. And we're now using that upvoting process on the questions. So we will be starting to look at your questions now and we'll be choosing the questions that you're voting for as well. So hopefully that will be helpful to you. So Mandeep, when you go into the questions, there's an option at the top that says most recent, and you can flip on that and you can look at the most upvotes. Don't know if you can see that. If not, I'll tell you where we're at and we'll figure it out between us. So we've got one which has been upvoted 17 times, so it seems quite popular. So yeah, and thanks Julia for sharing that and letting everyone know how we're approaching the Q&A because I know there can be some frustration if we don't get to every question. We apologize, we will do as many as we can. So somebody says that they have lost 35 kilos on Manjaro, came off it a few months back. The food noise came back almost instantly and they put 10 kilos back on in 3 months. I'm really curious to know what drives the food noise. Is it poor habits, lack of self-control, or something hormonal? Okay, it's a complex answer, isn't it, Mandeep?
It is very, very complex. There's so many different things that go into food noise and obesity. So a combination of, hormones tends to be the biggest one, our brains, how we're wired. There's lots of different factors that go into it. And actually what you've mentioned, I can't actually see the question, but what you've mentioned, stopping a weight loss treatment and then putting weight back on, that is, we do see that and we know that this does happen. So again, we encourage people, it may be, again, talk to your healthcare provider depending on your situation, but you may need to stay on a lower dose for longer, like a maintenance dose. You may need to have a look at habits and what's changed. So a number of factors to have a look at and to review, but usually staying on a lower dose for longer is more beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. But also just think, you know, it is the hormones, your ghrelin and your leptin, your hunger hormones, your satiety hormones. You need a little bit of time for those to restart working in your normal physiology. I think we have to be prepared if we come off a weight loss medication that we know the research tells us, doesn't it, Mandeep, that hunger will restart. But we also know that that's true of any strict dieting approach. It's not just the weight loss medications, it's any sort of calorie counting where you're really crashing the calories down low. One of the things that your body is doing is it sort of has this very primate protective mechanism built in. So it's all built around something called your set point. So your body is trying to get you back to where you started. Maybe not quite where you started. If you've had some plateaus, it might be trying to get you back to that plateau point, sort of like a protective mechanism. I think one of the things you can do is actually you can tell yourself to ignore the food noise, almost create some rules for yourself around food for a little while till this settles down. It does settle down, doesn't it, Mandeep? But it just takes quite some time. So the food planning becomes really important. The eating with your intelligence and that mindfulness becomes really important. Not to say you're not intelligent. We've all been here. I've definitely been here where that sort of like hunger takes over. I've been really interested in reading recently about how we're bombarded with food messages in society all of the time as well, and what impact that has on our hunger and our food noise. We're watching TV, we're getting cues, even if it's just watching other people eating food, magazine articles, recipe books, all of the cooking shows, all of the beautiful food on Instagram and wherever we look for social media. And I just think I'm really interested, and I've started researching how impactful that is on all of us and whether actually there's a place for food to be less exciting sometimes and it just to be something about the nutrition that we eat and actually what our body needs rather than the excitement. Excitement sort of almost creates this need for us to feel excited by food all of the time. So maybe that's something to take away is maybe food doesn't need to be exciting every time we eat. And actually, it isn't lack of self-control. I think we need to let go of that message for ourselves. There is nothing here that anyone is doing wrong. It's your body's physiology almost working a little bit to protect you, but almost a bit against you in that early phases of coming off any dieting approach or weight loss medication. I think there are things you can do, aren't there, Mandeep? Like you can fill yourself up and make sure you've got that protein in there. Make sure you're eating those vegetables. Try and make the habits around food now while you're on this journey. Um, really think about filling yourself up with those foods. Eat that core meal plan. Julia, if you could share the core meal plan. I don't know if people have already got that, but that would be really helpful. The protein and foods document would be helpful. Really nail it as much as you can. And if you're nailing it and you're still hungry, up the protein a little bit more unless you've got any health reasons not to. And make sure you're drinking well, staying hydrated. That's really important. And I would say maybe if you're really, really hungry at the end of the meal, just go for a walk. There's a lot of interesting research that doing those squats, Mandy, after a meal can really help your insulin sensitivity as well. So we will share a resource, Scott, for the core meal plan. So Julia, if you can share that if you haven't already. There'll be a link. You can click on the link in the chat box and that should open for you on your own laptops at home. I hope that helps. It's a really, really important question. So thank you to everyone who's voted for it as well. Oh, this is a really nice one. What are the most effective daily habits for managing stress-related eating? Mm, gosh, that's a really interesting question. Mandy, what are you thinking? I'm thinking
Effective daily habits for managing stress-related eating.
we have a whole webinar on stress management.
We have, haven't we? Yeah.
I would say watch the replay of the stress. Somebody said vodka. No, no, that is not the answer. I'm sorry to tell you this. It doesn't work in the long run. It's going to have an impact on your blood sugar and it's just going to make you start nibbling all the things you want to avoid. We know that alcohol can really trip us up along the way. I would say breath work is really important, isn't it? So being aware that stress is part of, we know for all of us, stress is now part of most people's lives. So it's about how we live. It's about eating in a way where we balance our blood sugars. The core meal plan is going to really help with that. Stress is very inflammatory. You want to bring in those healthy fats as much as you can, calms inflammation down. Our mind, being mindful, listening to some soothing music, going for a walk in nature, all of those things, you need the offsets, whatever works for you, whatever makes you feel happy, calm, relaxed. You need 5, 10 minutes periodically in your life because it's so important. And actually, just even 5 minutes in a day can make a difference to stress levels. It doesn't have to be hours and hours. The reality is for most of us, we don't have hours and hours. So I think all of those stress management techniques, and it's personal. Some people find breath work really helpful. Other people find when they do breath work, they become breathless because they get so agitated thinking about their breath. So we're all human. Yoga is brilliant if you can get into yoga or Pilates. All of those things, sort of like mindful practices.
Dancing. I like dancing.
Yeah, it's
It's a good
brilliant.
one. Yeah.
I would,
And pre-planning as well. I always tend to find like if I know I've got a particularly heavy week, to try and pre-plan my meals, because otherwise I will be sort of reaching for the chocolates, because you're on the go, you're feeling a little bit stressed out, everything's feeling very intense. But actually, I know if I've done my weekly shop, I've prepared my meals, I know exactly what I'm going to eat throughout the day and at what time that helps a lot. So that again, but it's a habit, it's creating that habit of knowing once a week I'm going to do this, I'm going to plan out the meals. So yeah, that could be useful as well.
I think meal planning is absolutely up there,
Mm.
actually, as long as you can stick to it. And then when you're stressed, you tend to lose lots of magnesium, lots of B vitamins. We tend to use those more quickly than we can necessarily eat them. So really maximize up those foods that bring in those nutrients, those micronutrients. So magnesium, the dark green leafy vegetables, really important. Even some nuts, some dark chocolate. You'd be pleased here, chocolate features, but you want to go for the darker variety ideally. You want to be thinking about B vitamins, so animal products, so proteins, all of the eggs can be really rich in B vitamins, lentils, chickpeas, all of those things. Really, food can become our salvation if we get it right, but it can also be the thing that trips us up. Good. Next question that's been voted for 8 times. What should I track weekly to see progress beyond the scales? I love this question, Mandeep.
Yeah, so I think I mentioned touched on this earlier, but I quite like sort of like your steps. So it could be like your weekly step count, and again progress that you want to see. Look, week on week, I'm doing so much better. It might be your protein goals. That's one of my favorites as well. So knowing that you're hitting your daily protein goal, and you're being consistent with it, I think that is probably key. There's lots of kind of like helpful apps out there. One might be water intake again. I know talking to patients, they struggle with water intake. So it might be that you're going to track how much you're drinking. And again, you can see that each day or each week you are improving. And again, that's progress. So I actually think those kind of things are more important and more positively rewarding than looking at scales. And we do try and say, like, don't focus on the scales, actually, try and move away from the scales. We do need some metrics. So, we do want to keep an eye on how we're doing, but maybe look at how you feel within your clothes, what your energy levels are like. I would focus, they're more rewarding than, yeah, standing on scales and focusing on those.
Definitely, I'd agree. I think energy is definitely, your sense of energy when you wake up in the morning or how well you're sleeping, because actually that's such a key factor to well-being and health, isn't it? And don't forget, we've got a tracker app. So you could track some of these things on the tracker app. Julia, if you could share the link for the tracker app, that would be great. And well-being you mentioned, didn't you? So I think, yep, somebody's saying they focus on how their clothes feel and checking the scales less often. I think scales are an emotional attachment that can really trip us up as well. Because sometimes we can be feeling great, we can be feeling really great in our clothes, and then we get on the scales, but maybe there's a bit of fluid retention, and suddenly it says something we don't want to see. That won't necessarily be the thing that is true as well. So somebody's saying they're going to their third dose of the 10 milligrams, but finding that the appetite suppression is not as good as it was on the lower doses. I thought the higher the dose, the more effective it would be. What could explain this? Mandeep, I'm handing over to you.
Yeah, we do get this feedback quite a lot, don't we? And I think if you think about how the weight loss injections work on your receptors, it could be that at a lower dose you had sufficient suppression of your receptors. So actually, I do say to people, don't worry too much. Be consistent. So actually, if you're finding that you're getting enough um, kind of like appetite suppression to dampen down your food noise, you're not getting any side effects. I think that's always probably the key thing. Remain consistent. You could be going through a plateau, and again, that's quite normal, and that's a normal part of our weight loss journey. And again, I do tend to say to people, don't get disheartened. Don't let that discourage you. It's part and parcel of it. You will come out of the plateau. Just again, remember your habits that you're creating and remain consistent. And actually, in some cases, I have said if you are finding that the lower doses are working for you, that's fine. Drop down. You don't have to ramp up through the doses. Stick to a lower dose if it's working for you. You're not getting side effects. There's absolutely no reason to increase.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. Thanks, Mandeep. Somebody's saying since starting their weight loss medications last year in November, they've developed a very sweet tooth that they've never had before. Is that normal? I haven't heard that, I have to say, Mandeep.
I've not come across that. I know they are, again, weight loss injections are related to kind of taste alterations, but the issues tends to be your taste changes. So you actually don't want like processed food, like junk food, those kind of things. But I've not come across this
We'll keep an eye.
before.
We'll keep an eye and see if we get any messages in the patient messaging service. And just keep an eye. Obviously, this is also quite a new medication. Obviously, it's been through all of the safety trials and is licensed. But, we're learning all the time, aren't we, Mandeep? The research is ongoing and the outcomes for human beings is being understood more and more in terms of all of these effects. So it may be that in the fullness of time that there will be a subset of the population who find that their taste buds orientate them. If you are really struggling with that sweetness, I would really recommend that you think about foods that are naturally sweet. You may be doing that already, but things like some nice medjool dates, which are sort of low glycemic dates. Berries are really naturally sweet. Having those with some Greek yogurt, vanilla essence can bring sweetness without adding any sweetness to the party. Cinnamon is fantastic for that as well. So really, really thinking about how you can satisfy that taste need. I often find if people aren't eating enough protein that they will start craving sweets as well. So maybe it's just worth looking and seeing whether alongside taking the medication you're actually eating enough. If you're not able to eat enough, it may be worth thinking about reducing the dose of your medication so you can eat more. Because this is about your journey, isn't it, Mandeep? It's about finding the sweet spot for you. Excuse the pun when we're talking about sweet things, but it's about finding what works for you and really helps you get get through this. People are asking about supplements. I would say my go-to, and we generally recommend, is for people to take a multivitamin alongside taking either Wegovy or Manjaro. And you can find relatively inexpensive multivitamins on the Boots platform. But also, vitamin D is worth looking at if you've had a test or if your GP would do a test. I would really recommend having vitamin D levels checked. And we were talking the other day about collagen, and I think that's quite an interesting area. And I know people who perhaps can help with their skin elasticity. So I think it's worth considering. Would you agree, Mandy?
Yeah, I do. And I think I spoke to you about this as well, didn't I, Ruth, about collagen and the importance of it and so many different functions within the body for collagen. So yeah, I think definitely want to consider.
We
um,
are creating some written information on collagen, so you don't have to take it in a supplement. You can get collagen through eating protein-rich foods, and there are some proteins in certain foods which we're putting in that document that can help create protein in your bodies or create that collagen in your bodies. But I think having looked at the research, there seems to be quite a strong argument that it can be perhaps helpful. Yeah, let's leave it there. So hopefully that's helpful. And I think keep it simple because if you're paying for your medications as well, it can become expensive. So food first, I think, first and foremost, and see what else you can do after that. Can you see the next question, which is my office is full of not healthy eaters, multiple yo-yo dieters, and sin for biscuits. Slimming World, I really struggle to keep away from the biscuits in the office. I have none at home. What can be done to overcome this? I love this question because this is real life, isn't it? This is making it work in real life. Yeah, I went into a meeting in a team, a healthcare team, not my current healthcare team, and literally the whole of the room was filled. They created a banquet, a feast just for being there in this awful meeting, and the food was just made me want to cry actually. It was so bad. So I sort of really recognized that. And the sins, yeah, my goodness, we won't go into that because we don't want to be rude about anything. But goodness me, it's so important to recognize. Hey, isn't it brilliant you're recognizing it? That's great. Really hard to ignore. I think it's about, what would you say, Mandeep? It's about willpower, maybe taking foods in that you can have instead. I think
yeah,
taking a healthy biscuit in with you if you need to join in. I think sometimes it can feel really awkward in those situations where you're the one person who's saying no, thank you. Can feel quite awkward, can't it? So taking stuff in would be really helpful.
yeah,
I think it's hard. And I think the more you can just say, actually, do you know what? The last time I had biscuits, I felt really unwell. I'm just going to avoid them for a while. You can make up all sorts of stories. And people aren't going to challenge you over the stories you tell them. So you make up the story, make up the line, make up what works for you, make up anything that you can say with a straight face and carry through. And remember that this is about your journey and it's not for anyone else to comment on or to have any interest in as well. I think that's the thing. It isn't for anyone else, is it? Somebody's saying I'm confused about healthy replacements. If you're pre-diabetic, are grapes no good? And how many bananas a week are okay? Oh my goodness, that's hard. Have a look at our core meal plan, suitable for anybody who's pre-diabetic, not pre-diabetic, or even diabetic. It's just a very healthy, basic approach to eating. I would say if you're eating a banana, they are generally there's a term called glycemic load. So, glycemic load is about how a food affects your blood glucose. We talk about this on the How to Eat, the What to Eat webinars. There are replays of those. So, we will share, Julia, if you don't mind sharing that replay link. Have a look at those pre recordings. They will be repeated later on, maybe August, September time. I'm sure we'll put those back on again because they're really important basics for all of us. So, it's about how the food that you're eating affects your blood sugar. And that's why it's really important when you're in that pre-diabetic state, because what you want to be doing is creating a very less spiky blood sugar. We're going to have variation in our blood sugar, but we don't want to have high increases and big dips. We want it to be as evenly balanced as possible. So a banana is fine, but I would always say have the less ripe banana. It's going to have less sugar in it, have less impact on your blood glucose. Combine it with some protein, have a small handful of nuts alongside that banana. Suddenly, the spike from the blood sugar from the banana is going to be lessened. So it's how we have it. Have it with some natural yogurt, some Greek yogurt. Got protein in there, you've got healthy fats in there. You put the banana in there. It's sweet, delicious, something you enjoy eating, and then hey presto, you can have that banana, but you're having it in a different way. Grapes, very similarly, again, they're quite unnaturally sweet. I would swap to berries instead. So have strawberries or raspberries or blueberries, or you can buy packets of frozen berries in every supermarket I've been into sell them now. It's fantastic. They can go in your freezer, it makes them very affordable, and you can just have a small portion. Palm size, a nice cup-sized portion is a portion of berries. They're naturally really sweet. You could add some vanilla essence or some cinnamon if you wanted extra sweetness. Have them again with yogurt, but they are less sugary than the banana or the grapes. I hope that helps. Anything you'd want to add there, Mandeep? I think we're good with that, aren't we?
Yeah, and I think it just comes down to quantity as well. So, as you mentioned, like portion sizes, so it's fine to have grapes, stick to the portion size and think about how much you're eating sort of over a period of a week, and try and reduce that down.
Yeah, okay. Somebody is saying that they've struggled to eat at a regular time for a long time. They get up at different times depending on where they're working, whether they need to drive to work, whether they're working from home. We recognise this very much.
Mhm.
How can you get yourself into a regular pattern of eating? And it's probably, yes, absolutely, you're recognising that it's probably quite similar for shift workers. I would say, what would you say, Mandeep? Look at your plan, presumably
I
look at
think
your
pre-plan.
work.
Pre-planning your day. So if you know those days, your day starts earlier, that's absolutely fine. But I guess that's where your meal planning is going to come in. So, take everything with you that you need to so that you're fully prepared. You mentioned snacking so that, you're not just reaching for quick snacks on the go. So I would definitely say a little bit of planning ahead will probably help throughout that week.
Yeah, I think pre-planning is the key, and also almost setting like a time the fridge is going to be closed. So
Hmm.
regardless of whether you're working from home or in an office, you can almost say, right, my last meal is going to be 7 p.m. That's when the fridge is closing, or whatever time is relevant or reasonable for you. We obviously some really interesting research around eating in daylight hours, that being a time when our body is more insulin sensitive. And that is really important in terms of weight management. So, eating larger meals earlier in the day can be helpful. So, really put some thinking into that and make it like a voyage of discovery. If you eat a better meal early in the day, do you snack less? Because actually, you've got better satisfaction. So, I think sometimes we skip meals, but then it all catches up 8 hours later. So we want to avoid the catch up. Somebody's saying, Mandeep, they're on week 6 of Wegovy and on zero point 0.5 milligrams and have lost 5 kilos. Sounds brilliant. Well done. Do we recommend calorie counting? Okay.
No,
We
no.
don't. I think there's always a caveat, isn't there? There's always a
Yeah.
maybe. If you're really struggling to understand what a normal portion of food looks like, then doing calorie counting for a week or something like that might be good, but actually base that on your current weight and your basal metabolic rate, your needs, how much activity you're doing, all of those things to work out how many calories you need. It's quite complicated. If you're a Boots Online doctor customer, please do write in. We can give you some suggested links to look at or help you work that out if it's helpful. But really and truly, that's not the way we recommend you go. We know that calorie counting becomes really boring. We all start cheating the system, not writing everything down. It's not just us saying this, Mandeep, is it? It's what the research tells us that people just get bored.
Yeah.
So we just want you to learn to eat that core meal plan as your basic structure, an occasional treat here or there by once or twice a week, depending on where you are on your weight loss journeys. Make it really, really easy, simple, habit forming, perfect.
Trying to stick to like real foods as much as possible, moving away from processed foods, and naturally you'll find that the calories you're eating are coming from good food sources, which is going to do so much better for your body. But yeah, I think calorie counting is complicated. Yeah,
And all
try.
of the science now is saying actually it's sort of a flawed science, really. Calories, not all foods are equal. We do talk about this in the food webinars. So not all foods are equal. One food with the same amount of calories will not have the same effect physiologically in your body or on your appetite or on your cravings. Somebody's saying again that they're craving ice cream and fizzy drinks. Um, get that protein in, get those healthy fats in, follow the core meal plan, come back and let us know how you get on. And if it carries on being a problem, send us a message and we'll see what we can do to unpick what's going on for you. Um, Okay, there's a specific question around medication and whether you can use a pen after a longer gap. If you're a Boots Online Doctor customer, please write in. That's sort of like a very medical, very personal question. We can't safely answer that in a webinar. But if you would be really great and email us in on your patient messaging system, we would be very happy to respond and answer and give you some appropriate advice. I hope that helps. Um, Somebody's going on a river cruise next week. Interested to know how the food noises when confronted with a restaurant quality food and a wine list. Any tips? Well, enjoy the cruise, I would say. What would you say?
Yeah, I think so. I think enjoy the cruise and be mindful, I think, alcohol intake if you're on medication. So maybe think about some alternative drinks that you can enjoy with your food. And again, everything in moderation while you're away. I'm sure you'll want to enjoy it, and there's absolutely no reason why you can't. But just have a think about what you're eating and how much
Yeah,
while you're away, especially as you are on treatment as well. So, you
yeah.
don't want to avoid any side effects and becoming sick. So, yeah.
We'll be producing some guidelines around collagen. So there's a quick question about collagen. I think the recommendation would be looks like marine collagen slightly has the edge over bovine. But again, we will publish some information. It might take a little while to get that in print and out to you, but we'll do our best to do that soon. Mandeep, thank you so much, and Julia, for being here today. It's been
Thank
really
you.
good fun. Thank you to everyone who's joined us and for all your questions. I think we've covered the majority of the questions. We haven't managed every single one, but we've done as much as we possibly can. Really look forward to seeing you again next week. We have a feedback form. Hopefully, Julie, you've managed to send out the link. I didn't notice. If you did, yes, thank you so much for doing that as well. If you have a moment to give us some feedback, we'd love to hear good and bad. We always want to improve. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Have great weeks. Bring back your success stories, bring back your awarenesses, those what you're doing with those habits. We would love to hear.
Brilliant. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.